Hello, I'm Andrew Wommack, and it's a real honor for me to be one of the sponsors of the Values Voter Summit. And Tony Perkins has been a good friend to me for a number of years, and I'm just 100% behind what's happening there. I am the president of Charis Bible College, Andrew Wommack Ministries. We've also got a 501c4 called Truth and Liberty, where we speak out on social issues, political issues. And what I want to deal with is that there are a lot of Christians who think that somehow or another, Jesus was a pacifist because of certain things that he said, like turn the other cheek. If somebody sues you at the law, let them take not only your coat, but your cloak also. I haven't got time to go into all of this, but I just want to deal with one of the things that is often misused and misquoted and misapplied by Jesus. This is out of the 22nd chapter of the book of Matthew. And a Pharisee came to him and said, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? And in verse 37, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And then in verse 39, he said, And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And so many times you'll hear people talk about but that we as Christians, we aren't supposed to be critical of anybody. We aren't supposed to show any disrespect. Matter of fact, I was over in England one time and I held a meeting in a public auditorium in Plymouth, England. And because it was public, the LGBT community came against the government officials there and told them that they shouldn't be holding a religious thing, that I was anti-homosexual, which is not correct. I do believe it's a sin. I don't believe it's what God told us to do, but I'm not against homosexuals. I love them, and that's the reason I tell them the truth. But anyway, the government allowed me to go ahead and hold the meetings, but the BBC wanted an interview, and I wouldn't give it to them because I knew that they would twist my words and misrepresent it. So I didn't grant them an interview, but they showed up anyway, stuck a camera right in my face the very first night. And they said, the Bible teaches tolerance, that you're supposed to be tolerant towards everyone. Why aren't you tolerant? And I said, the Bible does not teach tolerance. And it's just, it totally disarmed them. All of their things that they had planned to say, they said, what are you saying? And I began to show them certain things about that the fear of the Lord is to hate evil, Proverbs chapter 8, verse 13, that you're supposed to abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good, Romans chapter 10, verse 9, be angry and sin not, Ephesians. And I just began to tell them these things and say, look, we love people, but we love them enough that we are going to tell them the truth. And it just totally put them back on their heels, and they didn't ever use any of it. But see, people have misunderstanding, and they take scriptures like, but you're supposed to love everyone. Let me show you the context. Jesus quoted an Old Testament passage of scripture when he said that the second is like unto it, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. That is a quotation from Leviticus chapter 19. And in verse 18, it says, Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. So that is the verse that Jesus quoted, saying that this was the second greatest command beyond just loving God. The second thing is you got to love your neighbor as yourself. But let me show you the context of this. If you take a scripture, if you take the text out of the context, all you have left is a con. And this has happened a lot. And people have cherry picked these statements of Jesus, taken them out of context. And this one about loving your neighbor as somehow or another being interpreted that I would never say anything that would make a person feel uncomfortable or make them feel like any way I didn't approve of what they're doing, that we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. Look at the context of this. If you back up just one verse, this is Leviticus chapter 19. And in verse 17, it says, Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. And then it says in verse 18, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. So the context of this says that you, under any circumstances, you have to speak the truth and not suffer sin upon your neighbor, but you need to love him as you love yourself. You know, if you were headed for a cliff, if you were headed for certain destruction and somebody else could see what was happening, wouldn't it be love for them to tell you the truth and to not let you be destroyed by this thing? You know, I actually had a situation happen where I was driving up one of these mountain roads in Colorado and a man hit a horse and it caved in the windshield. He was laying there in blood, and I stopped beside him, and it was on a dark night. You could barely see. There was fog, and that's the reason he hit this horse. And as I was trying to deal with this man, another car came around the corner about 55, 60 miles an hour, and he hit the horse that was laying in the road. And I mean, it nearly wrecked them. So I ran up to see if I could help them. And while I was dealing with that, I heard another car coming. So you know what I did? I actually ran down the road, around the corner, and I started jumping out in front of cars on a foggy night. I mean, it was pitch dark, and I had nothing except just me. I was jumping out in front of cars. They wouldn't see me until the last minute. I'd have to jump off the road. They'd slam on their brakes. I had people honking horns, cussing, and I'm sure they were saying some choice words about me. But when they finally got around the corner, and saw that all of the lanes were blocked and that there were wrecks and a horse laying in the road, I'm sure some of those same people who probably said some very bad things about me recognized what I was doing and probably appreciated. Some probably didn't, but nonetheless, it was probably 20 minutes before the police got there, and I probably flagged down at least 20, 30, 40 cars and possibly might have saved some people's lives. Now, see, in the natural, we see that if you really love other people instead of yourself, you would try and help them. I could have thought, well, people are going to think I'm crazy. Some single woman driving up here on a dark night is going to think some guy's trying to stop their car. They may doubt my intentions, and I don't want people to think bad of me. But see, if I would have done that, that wouldn't have loved my neighbor. That would have been loving me. And I'm saying this in love, but there's a lot of people today who are quoting Jesus about, but we're supposed to love our neighbor. We aren't supposed to make them feel uncomfortable about anything. And we're using that as a cop out when the truth is we love ourselves more than we love other people because we don't want to suffer the criticism. We don't want to be called a fanatic. We don't want to be branded as a homophobe or all of these other names that they give people if you speak out against any ungodliness that the Bible speaks against. And the truth is, we don't really love our neighbor unless we are telling them the truth. And so again, with the Values Voter Summit, this is one of the things that I just love about Tony is that, man, he always is encouraging people to pray. He's always dealing with things in the spiritual realm, but it's not limited to that. He's also standing up and he loves his neighbor enough that he's telling people the truth. And that's what this whole summit is about, is to motivate people. And for those of you who are leaders in the Christian community, we've got a responsibility. It's not only a privilege, it is a responsibility to stand up and speak the truth. Jesus said that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And it's only the truth you know that is going to make you free. If we aren't standing up and speaking, there's going to be people who say, but you aren't tolerant, you aren't walking in love. But the truth is, it is love when you tell a person the truth, because it's only the truth that's going to change them. The answers to our problems are not purely political. We've got to speak the truth. We have the power, and I just encourage you to stand up and to let your voice be heard. We've got just a few weeks before one of the most important elections in the history of this nation, and what you and I do could tip the scales in the balance towards God and towards seeing this nation come back to the Lord. So I share these things with you. I hope it's been a blessing, and I encourage you to love others enough to tell them the truth, because it's the truth that is going to set them free.